Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in internet shitlords. I don't know if you've seen, but if you see my old video about Thaco the Clown, well, he's been back in the social media recently because somebody's been pointing out that with Jason Tondro's comments about how regular gamers are all horrible, sexist, racist gatekeepers that need to be taken out of the hobby and so on. Thaco the Clown really aged badly. Just a reminder. This is the closest thing to Thaco the Clown's pipe that I have, this is actually a anniversary special pipe that was made for a Canadian tobacconist. But yeah, he was inspired by me, and it's funny to me to see that he is back, and it's Thaco's revenge, as people have been turning on the comments that Jason Tondro made. But today I'm not really here to talk about that. I've been kind of sick at this point. I think the last 4 videos have all been about WotC, and it's getting on my nerves now that I haven't talked about anything else for the last while. So first of all, if you guys have topics on like the subject of role playing that you would like me to possibly address, just say so in the comments, right? Like tell me what sort of videos you'd be curious to see me do, and I might do them. You never know, right? But yeah, secondly, I just I have to. Hasbro's been sticking its foot in it again, and you have to point those things out, right? And then the whole Elon thing and all that. But I wanted to get back to talking about something outside of that, and so I am going to continue right now in the Baptism of Fire series. The last time that I did a video on it, I had gone through the entire section on monsters, which is still further up here. Okay. Done that. There's the monsters. All right, so we had done the monsters. That's the previous video. And that brings us to what is now what you could say is the actual setting section of the book. Okay. So it starts here with talking about what Poland was like. And so basically, it's important in a campaign like this that you have a good setting section. And this takes up about 50 pages of the product. And, not unlike other products, like, World of the Last Sun couldn't be more different from, early medieval Poland. But, what it has is a number of different locations and things that can be done in that location. And the text itself should provide all kinds of kind of adventure cues of what to do, right? And the place that I usually start with is a timeline. And now I cover recent history, of course, which is important, but then I also have a timeline of future events that are something that allows the DM. The DM doesn't have to say that everything keeps going from like the start of the campaign like it would have in real history, but it lets you see what would have happened in real history so that you can work on, like you can use that. You can make reference to it or use it as part of adventures. The default starting campaign of Baptism of Fire is the year 1025, which is when Boleslav was crowned king of Poland. But you'll notice that I go from 966 to 1024 in the timeline before that, which is more in depth than I usually do. Like a lot of gaming products have these long timelines of everything that happened before the campaign. And in my products, I have a very short timeline of that sort of thing, and then a long timeline of stuff that happens after. But in this case, I put in more stuff. Partly because you don't actually like have to start the campaign at 1025 if you don't want to. So, for example, my own Baptism of Fire campaign did not start in 1025. It started in 992, right? So at the time that Mieszko the first dies and Boleslav takes over. So you can decide where you want to start. As you can see, the timeline goes all the way to about 1050. Okay, so if you're starting in 1025, if you're starting in the default, you have like about 25 years worth of stereotypically Polish pain and suffering to get through before you start getting before you get to the end, let's say. I mentioned a few of the basic offices of the PS Crown. There'll be more material on like officers of the court in my upcoming 101 Sarmatians. But the one that everybody's curious about is the Beaver Master. Obviously, that was real, and I always want to say, well, you have to look at the book to find out. But the Beaver Master was the guy in charge, basically, of enforcing the king's laws in all of Poland, right? And his agents, the Beaver Masters, went around enforcing those laws. And the main law that caused that was one about the conservation of beavers, that you couldn't kill beavers anymore because, medieval people weren't stupid. And they had kind of, at some point, one of them figured out we're killing all the beavers. They were eating the beavers. And and then they found out, wait, these dams are kind of important, And so the king passes an edict saying you can't do this anymore. You can't kill any beavers. And, so essentially these guys were originally meant to hunt poachers. There were other things too, like falcons, for example, because the Polish aristocrats became very obsessed with falconry around this time. And they had also, therefore, banned any person from doing any harm to a falcon or a falcon's nest. Okay, because they wanted to have as many falcons as possible for their sport of falconry. And so that was another thing that was enforced. But then they also went out, presumably, and enforced other rules, like, for example, the anti-paganism rules, right? If they went to some village and they saw there was a statue of Marzana, the goddess there, it would be them who would be enforcing the king's justice and figuring out why it hadn't been already, So playing a Beaver Master campaign could be one type of campaign you could run in Baptism of Fire. So I got some details about Polish culture and the royal family itself. And then here is this incredibly beautiful, I don't know if you can quite see it. Well, you can see it now. Okay, so it's a hex map, right? It's a hex map of 11th century Poland. And it is just magnificent. It took a lot of work. I know for a fact that the Mad Scribe had to do a lot of work to get this right. And, we're very proud of it. I'm very proud of the work he did, basically, with a bit of guidance from me. So this is basically what Poland would have looked like at the time. It's that's worth it alone. But then on top of that, we start with the gazetteers, where we talk about each region. As you'll notice, the map, the mini part, the part of the other map that is correspondent to the region, will be shown at the first page. That means you don't have to constantly be flipping back, right? If you're looking for something about Greater Poland, then there you are. So the gazetteer covers all the different regions of Poland. The first of these is Greater Poland, or Wielopolska, which is the area where the capital was at this time, the capital being Gniezno, and it was the kind of central region. Interestingly enough, it wasn't, historically, it wasn't the richest, it wasn't the most advanced, and it also wasn't the one that had the most warriors, right? But it did have an advantage, right? Because remember, this is all happening right at the time that Poland starts to exist. Before that, each of these kind of areas were different territories, right? With the different chieftains and even different cultures and traditions. And some people might not have bet on Greater Poland being what would become the epicenter of Poland, because both the pagan north and the already Christianizing south had more trade routes. They were more prosperous in general, right? But the thing that Greater Poland had, it had two great advantages. The first was that it had a ruling family that ended up making connections with the Holy Roman Empire, right? So they had outside help. And the second one is that they had the largest population density of any area of Poland, which is still a very low population, but it was the biggest one. And, they had the people. The people was what was necessary at the time. Then you have Masovia. This is a territory that's further to the east. And Masovia is a rougher and tougher area of Poland. When you go further well out into the east, it's full of barbarians, and some of them that are very hostile. And if you go further east than that, it's got the Rus, which is even worse, right? The Kievans. So there's lots of crazy stuff going on, even a deadly mermaid. And the Masovians were famous for being like the toughest fighters in Poland. So, and as you can see, each section is detailed by its different towns and cities, and there's often significant information there that you can use to make each one particular. Then there's the region of the Vistula, which nowadays is Malopolska, which means Lesser Poland. And although it was called Lesser Poland, it was actually like already more civilized at this time than the North was, especially. But the thing is, they had less population density, as you can imagine, right? The Greater Poland was mostly plains, and this is like a lot of this area was hills and badlands, right? So they had the richness of the Vistula River, which allowed a lot of trade, and that is what made them do so well, basically. And of course, Krakow is probably the most advanced city in Poland at this time. And it's also like the more fairy tale place, right? Like in the south, you have the Carpathian Mountains, which are full of monsters and frightening things. And then you have like the Trail of Eagles' Nests, which is like this weird otherworldly place, as are the Thornlands here, you know. And there's the mountain. Where is that? So somewhere around here. The mountain of Lisagora, the Witch Mountain, is like in this area. So it's a more fairy tale-y sort of place. I mean, even Krakow, it starts that, you know, its history begins with the killing of a dragon, you know. And then we have Silesia. So Silesia is like the newest possession. It's the territory like down on this side. It's bordered by Bohemia, which is to say today like Czechoslovakia, and Czechia. And then in the north, it's bordered by Germany. And basically, this is an area that Mieszko I conquered in 990 from the Bohemians who had occupied it before. So it's a contested territory. But the people there are mostly Poles, right? They're from the same background as the Poles and not the Bohemians. So they favor being in this place. But, you know, the Bohemians aren't going to let it go without a fight. Those lousy Bohemians. All right. No, I got nothing against the Bohemians, actually. And then finally, there's Pomerania, which is the wild pagan north, and but that sounds like it's like the land of Conan the Barbarian, and it's not. At this time, all of these cities that were like on the Baltic coast were unbelievably rich, and in many cases much more international and sophisticated than anything that was down here in Greater Poland. Right, the Christians of the area seemed more rustic, definitely, than the people from Kołobrzeg or Dansk, right? So it's just funny, right? But on the other hand, there were in the borderlands actually between Greater Poland and Pomerania, there were a lot of kind of tribal pagans that were, you know, not very sophisticated at all. Like similarly with the hills here in those areas, right? But at the same time, this kind of, it's interesting because it shatters that illusion of like that the pagan tribes people must have been kind of backwards before they Christianized. But that's obviously not true when you think about it, right? Like there was a ton of Scandinavian peoples who were not Christianized but had very sophisticated cultures, and you know that. So it just doesn't. It isn't actually part of what registers. In any case, Pomerania is definitely the place that you will go if there's going to be like pagan versus Christian conflict, or if your characters are trying to get involved in trade. And another thing is that I can announce at this moment that I have now started working on my next sourcebook after 101 Sarmatians. My next sourcebook for the Baptism of Fire series is going to be called The Last Vikings. And you see this little place here? Well, this is actually an island. You kind of can't tell because of the red line there that was like a border marking. But it is an island. And on this island is the place where the last Baltic Sea Viking pagans ended up being. And it was at this same time that there's a little community. Volyn was the sacred holy island of the northern Pomeranian peasants, or the pagans rather. And on that island, they had allowed a group of pagan refugees to settle there, of pagan Norse refugees, Vikings, right, to settle there and build a fortress to assist in the protection, right? And that place was called Jomsburg, and it was the place of the last pagan Vikings, and that's what that source book is going to be about. And of course, it's going to have lots of Viking stuff in it, and lots of stuff about going trading or raiding in the Baltic and things like that. So, but that's a long way to go. I've literally just started it, okay, guys? But I thought you'd appreciate knowing about that. Then, you know, we get through all there. There were a couple of other like extra little areas here that are the Valetti. That's the pagans that are they're off the map to the west. They were the pagans that were in the north of Germany at that time. And then Zervian and the Redlands, which were a little area that ended up being a big bone of contention, because both the Poles and the Kiev Rus wanted to claim it as their own. And so at this time, like, it was at one point it was conquered by the Poles, then they pushed them out, and then they came back in, but only like half of it. And so this is kind of an ongoing proxy war that's happening between Kiev and Poland, right? So some things never change, I guess, between the Rus and Poland. And all right, so that's basically everything you get there. But you see, that's 50 pages, and as you notice, like every entry, like even smaller towns and things like that, have details in them that will make them stand out when your characters travel through on that beautiful hex map. That you can look up any of the places and you can say, oh, there's this going on here, right? And you can talk about that. And that is the first step that will then later combine with, in the back of the book, which I'll be eventually getting to in another video, the random generation tables for traveling from place to place, and for random settlements, and for things like that, for the Wilderlands of Poland and all of that, in combination with the historical information. Those randomizers end up making it incredibly easy to run Baptism of Fire. Right? If you make use of the material and you make use of the rolls, and you have just all it takes after that is a tiny bit of imagination to figure out how to make them fit with each other. And if you get that, then you're good, right? Like, that's it. It's done. You've made the right combination, so to say, and it to your players, it'll seem like you had plotted something for way in advance. And I say this for myself because I've run this, and I've also run Sword and Caravan, which works on the same principle. And in both cases, the players, like, okay, now my players know that I'm not pre-planning as a rule, right? But there are times when they think, did you plan this, right? Like, what happened? Because it seems so. It seems so flawless in how it flows in, and that's the difference between having good foundational setting information and really good random tables, and having just any old random table, right? Because a random table that just picks a bunch of generic monsters and throws them in there, and then the roll is just that, is not going to be as good as one that simulates a living world. Anyway, but that'll be for a topic for a different video, for a later video where I'm going to be carrying on. There's still a few more sections to go here in Baptism of Fire because it's a big old book, and I will get to more of those later. So you can see here's Baptism of Fire, and this is soft cover and this is hard cover. They're both very nice. You can get both of them from Drive-Thru RPG. Same with World of the Last Sun there. And check out all my other products. It's getting closer to Christmas now, and one of my most recent Pundit Files products in the Red Room is the Feast of the Circumcision, which is the term in the Middle Ages for New Year's ceremony. But it sounds kind of weird, right? But it's essentially a holiday adventure in the world of Baptism of Fire. So check that one out, and check out the new one, Space Opera Adventure Locations, which is a series of set piece locations. I want to clarify one thing, because I had someone that commented to me. They bought that book and they thought they were expecting that it was going to be like more filled in, like as if they were mini adventures. These are not mini adventures in Space Opera Adventure Locations. They are describing typical places that you might find on a planet, on an ex-Confederation planet. and giving you a bunch of description and then a bunch of random generators or options to what could be in that particular version of this thing. So, for example, like a landing bay, bar, commercial zone, what other ones do we have? There's a lot of them. There was a gambling hall, a center, a government center. I'm forgetting the rest because I actually wrote that about like 9 weeks ago now. But there are several of them in there, and each of them will have details of what it would be like, what possible dangers can be there, and of course it's not going to be a set piece adventure because the whole point is for you to be able to use these locations in your space opera adventures. Like, you land on a planet and you're in an area where there's like a bazaar, a commercial street, right? There's a section that's just for that has like random tables to generate, the type of stores you might see or things you might see, and then like a random events table where there, something funny happens in the street or something unusual happens, So check all that out. Check out all my products. The links are going to be in the description below. But especially check out the latest Pundit Files Space Opera Adventure locations. It's available only at the Red Room, and it only costs $3.50. So that's really good. I just love the Red Room. Always sends me a report of like a sales report, and it's so nice seeing. Sometimes there's like usually in every month there's like because they do it sale by sale, right? And so it's customer by customer actually. So sometimes like a block of someone that bought like 17 of the issues, right? And I just want to say thank you to everybody who's done something like that. It's lovely. And I love being able to see it. I like seeing that there. I also see that with like Spectre Press's stuff. Like I know when someone's bought a copy of World of the Last Sun. My other guys don't do that, but it's I don't need that really, but if I need a sales report, I'll ask for one, but it is cool to see, right? And thank you to everybody who's picked up any of my books, or all of my books. And be sure to keep checking it out, right? And if this is the first time you've seen any of this, well, check out my other videos, hit subscribe, hit the like button, share these videos anywhere you think people might be interested in the material. Baptism of Fire is a role-playing game for adventuring in 11th century Poland, the epic battles of Christians versus pagans, political intrigues of the aristocracy, adventuring through the dark wilderness of the murky woods that were still infested with witches and monsters. All kinds of great action to be had in Baptism of Fire. All right. And I guess that's everything for today. Again, share the video, and currently about to smoke. As you see, I've filled it but haven't lit it yet. This is the Burlington's 50th anniversary special pipe. See you later.